Hi everyone, happy Friday and happy November. It is November now. Today is the last in our 5-part webinar series that we have been doing for election 2018. So we've done 4 webinars already talking about how to register to vote, how to access the polls with a disability, understanding healthcare and disability policies that you may be voting on. And today we are talking about candidate research. So Mollie and Zack should be here any minute. And then we're gonna, hi Frank. And then we're gonna be talking about how to research your candidates in your area and to make the decision if you have not already voted. So as you know, polls are open on Tuesday from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And if you haven't already, you can also still early vote if you are in an area where early voting is open. And if you are absentee balloting, you have to make sure that your absentee ballot arrives by Monday at 5 p.m. If it is later than that, it doesn't get counted. You can also drop off your absentee ballot at your early voting site, but you have to personally deliver it. So you can drop it off if you've already filled out your absentee ballot. Also, don't forget to sign your absentee ballot. I've been hearing of some people who have forgotten to put their signature on it. All right, so here is Zach. They should be here any second. You hear them. Here they are. Hi,
Hey,
Zach.
hey, it's actually just me today.
Just you.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. How is things going for you?
Good. So I was just telling everyone polls are open Tuesday from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Absentee ballots have to arrive by Monday at 5 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And they can drop those off at an early voting site if they haven't mailed it in yet. Chances are if you haven't mailed it in today, I'd be a little worried it might not get there Monday by 5.
Right.
So your options would be to either drop it off at early voting or to just not use it and go vote Tuesday.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to risk
agree.
it not getting there in time. All right, so Zach is here. Zach is with the Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance, and I've spent some time with him and Mollie this past week doing some phone banking, reminding our community to get out to vote. And I'm trying to multitask and it's not working. All right, so we have a couple handouts today. There's actually 2 handouts this time. So we have our regular handout with our agenda we're going to cover. And then I believe Zach created this grid to help you do your candidate research. So he will go over all of this. And like I said, Zach works at the Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance. He's on their public policy team. And do you want to just give your 2-second introduction of what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work at the Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance. I'm the direct lobbyist with BIA. And essentially what that means is I will work primarily with legislators to pass our agenda. And then Mollie, who's not here today, is our grassroots lobbyist, and she works more at gathering advocates, citizen advocates to come to the Capitol and tell their story. And those folks are people like Amy, who come and they share their story about how brain injury has affected their life and what policies and policymakers can do to help make their lives better. So we sort of work in tandem there to not only talk directly with legislators, but also bring folks who have experience with TBI and explain why it's important for them to vote the way they do.
Perfect. And so I just pinned in the comments the 2 links for today's 2 handouts. So you can pull those up and follow along or print those out later. Excuse me.
So, yeah.
And I was just going to mention too, in the link above the video, I have the link so you can watch any of the past webinars that we've done. There's 4 previous ones, so you can catch them all if you missed any.
Exactly. And I will be,
I'll
be trying to monitor the comments right now as well while we go through this. So if you have questions, pop them in there. I'll be doing my best to answer those as we go along. Otherwise, Amy, if I miss any, let me know. But today we're going to be talking about candidate researching, and it's super important for the way people vote. And just right off the bat, we have to get out here and say this is the reason we're doing these webinars, and the reason we've been talking this entire election cycle about the importance of voting is because it's very important, not only for us, but as an institution countrywide for folks with disabilities to vote. We want people with disabilities, and especially TBI, to feel empowered to vote and vote in the way that you want to vote. So it doesn't mean that everything, one of your friends says, or your parents, or your children, or whatever, if they have their own ideas, that's great. Let them have their ideas. But it's really important that you vote the way that you think that you should be voting. So in order to do that, though, you have to sort of start off with deciding what's important to you. So if we turn to the handout, we can dive right in here. The first step that we want to do is determine what you're looking for in a candidate. So typically people choose based off two things. The first one that they choose is based off leadership qualities. So that could be if they've, were a leader of a business, or they have been involved on the city council for a long time, or they've been an active member of the community. All of these sort of experience-driven stuff, it's what you would put on a resume. So what have they put on their resume, and what have they shown you for the reason that they should get the job? Because at the end of the day, being an elected official is a job, and the campaign is their job interview, and you're the hiring manager. So what is on their resume that you like? Is it that, what is the leadership that they've exhibited, and why should they have this job? And then the second part is issue positions. So this is not quite the same as a job interview, but their opinions on important policy agendas. So where do they stand on, healthcare? Where do they stand on housing or immigration or transportation or any other variety of issues that matter to folks? Which sort of brings me to something that we should also say is that you can vote any way you want, and you don't just have to vote based off of your TBI. We know that folks with TBIs, it's a big part of your identity, but it's not the entirety of your identity. Everything coalesces into one person that is you. It's not just you have a TBI, so you vote this way. We don't want people to feel that way. So make sure you vote in a holistic manner and not just one issue. You want to really analyze specific issues that matter to you beyond just the one thing. So keeping that in mind, we should actually try to determine what issues might matter to somebody with a TBI, which is that sort of second bullet point on the sheet there. So what matters to you? Is it healthcare? A lot of folks with TBIs are on Medicaid or Medicare or something like that. And it matters to a lot of people's health coverage. Is it housing? Are you on a Section 8 waiver, or is it, or voucher, I should say? Or is there anything important in your housing that's impacted by policy? Is it transportation? Do you want to see more transportation options in your community? And which candidate supports transportation? There's a whole variety and infinite number of other policy ideas out there that matter to individual folks. So are there any other things not related to TBI or your experience with TBI that matter to you? Is it something like immigration that has a impact on the way that you want to vote and those policy issues? So if we go to the second handout, not the one with yep, that's the one, Amy, thanks. It is what we call at Brain Injury Alliance a planning grid. Now, this planning grid is what I use, it's what Mollie uses when we're going through and we're trying to determine who to vote for. So before we even get to who the candidates are, what you should do is you should enter in the 3 top issues that matter to you. If you want to be advanced, enter more. But most people have about 3 big issues that really, really matter to them in their personal lives. So what are those three big issues? You know, in my life, I would put, what would I put? I would put healthcare is probably number one, affordable education as number two, and education in general, probably number two, and then their position on LGBT stuff. So those are my three big ones. So when I go through, I would put down those three issues in my grid, in my planning grid. So then from there, the next thing to do is to find who's on your ballot and which race you want to look at. So that's step three on the other sheet, on the the numbered sheet. In Minnesota, we always recommend folks go to mnvotes.org. It's the Secretary of State's website. And you can look at your sample ballot there, and you can find who's on your ballot, and you can find links to the candidate websites. However, in all states, you can actually go look at vote411.org. Now, this website is put out by the League of Women Voters, and it's a great resource. So what you can go through and do is you put in your address there. It pulls up all of the candidates on your ballot and all of the races that you have to decide. There's a drop-down menu with their biographical information, links to their website, and all of that jazz. And it's a great place to start looking at the candidates. So you can go there and you can find out who's on your ballot. So you hop back over to your planning grid. You can write which race it is at the top. So in Minnesota, if I was going to look at the governor's race, I could go to vote 411, put in my address, pops up that I have Tim Walz and Jeff Johnson on my ballot for the two major party candidates for governor. So I could go through and you could do candidate A and candidate B, and you write in their names at the top of that planning grid. This is a very basic planning grid where it has only two columns for candidates. In a lot of races, there will be more than that. There's third-party candidates that, if neither of the major party candidates are aligning with what you want, absolutely you should go look into the third-party candidates. And like I said at the beginning, vote for who you want to vote for. And if that's a third-party candidate, if that's who aligns with your interests the best, then you should vote for them. You should feel empowered to do so. So if you go back to Vote 411, you can find the candidate websites, and this is where you can start your information gathering phase. So in addition to those candidate websites, you can always check nonpartisan voter information websites, press reports, that's your newspapers, you have television, you have radio ads, you have candidate speeches and forums, and in the digital age like we're in, these are pretty much always going to be online somewhere for a live stream. There are candidate questionnaires that nonpartisan groups, such as the Brain Injury Alliance, we worked in conjunction on a candidate questionnaire this year with a bunch of other disability organizations for Minnesota statewide races. And then there's also candidate voting records that you can look at for if the candidate's an incumbent or if they're running for a different office. There's voting records of what they voted on in the past. And these are all great places that you can find it. And like I said, Vote 411 has that initial step. But let's say you are looking at one of your candidates' websites and your issue is housing that you really care about. Well, you poke through and you find that, this candidate doesn't even mention housing. What am I going to do? Well, this is where you kind of have to use your sleuthing abilities to find out, is sort of the word I would use. So if they don't say anything, you can always, go to a candidate forum and ask your question there. In digital age, all of these will be well published on usually their Facebook pages if they have a campaign, or if they have a candidate website, they'll have a upcoming event section usually. You can always write a letter or an email to the campaign. There's always going to be a contact us button on a candidate web page, or on your Facebook, you can direct message the campaign page on Facebook and ask your question. Or, and this might be the simplest way, is you can always Google candidate name on issue. And then that's how, I found out a lot about the candidate positions on housing this year, because they didn't have it on their website, but I was able to do, Tim Walz on housing or Jeff Johnson on housing, and I was able to find their remarks from a candidate forum they did up in Duluth on affordable housing options and their plans for that. And that was very helpful for me in my own planning grid to be able to find that information. So once you do the planning grid, you can go through and evaluate your own positions, because you had those from before you even looked up the candidates, where you stood. Which candidate lines up better? Now, for a lot of folks, you're not going to like everything candidate has to say. But usually there's those 3 issues that you care more about, and then you can sort of base your opinion off those. I always try to use an odd number because sometimes you need a tiebreaker. And if it comes down to 2 to 1, so you have 2 checks in one column and 1 check in the other one, then it's easier to make that call for the person with 2 checks because you agree with them more frequently. It's my opinion that you shouldn't always agree with everything your elected official does, because if you just blindly follow, that's not really being active in politics. You can, if you're being active and you're following along and you're saying, you know what, no, I actually do agree with this position. I agree with that. That's really good, but you shouldn't feel pressured to agree with everything a candidate says. Otherwise, you're going to be disappointed. So at the end of the day, you kind of have to make your decision. Did one candidate stand out? Do you agree with their leadership qualities? Do you agree with their issue positions? Generally speaking, in my personal voting choices, tend to side more with their policy positions rather than their leadership style, because there's a lot of people who don't go the traditional route through politics. They don't start small, they go big right away, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, but generally the policy decisions are what's going to be most important when they go vote, not whether or not they came from a specific background or not. So just once again, to sort of bring it back full circle, this is going to be super important for you to make the decision for you, not make the decision for somebody else. It's the decision that impacts you and the vote you want to make. So we just really want you to feel empowered to vote the way that you do, and don't let anybody try to strong arm you into voting a certain way or not. Vote the way that makes most sense to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I filled out my sheet a little bit just to show you guys. So here in Minnesota, like Zach said, we have our governor race. So I put our 2 candidates at the top, and then my top issues down the side. And then I'll just go to their site and look up, where they stand on all of my issues and see who lines up the best. And then I think, is it like 36 states are having a governor's race?
Oh, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
This is the big.
So most of you watching probably have a governor's race going on, but then you probably also have a Senate and Congress and maybe a mayor. So you can just print a new sheet for each one.
Yep.
To
exactly. And
plot it out.
This is the midterm year, and every 2 years there is a full turnover in the House, both at the state level and at the national level. So your congressional district is up for re-election every 2 years. And so the entire control of Congress is at stake. So make sure you get out to vote, because your vote really does matter.
Mm-hmm. And as I said at the beginning, if you have not mailed your absentee ballot back in yet, if you were planning to absentee vote, please drop it off at an early vote site. It has to get there Monday by 5 p.m. If it doesn't get there, it doesn't count. And if you were to mail it today, it's kind of a crapshoot if it might get there in time. Yeah. So you can always drop it off at your early voting site, or you can rip it up and just go vote at the poll on Tuesday. So those would be your best options.
Yeah, it's really getting too late to send in those absentee ballots. And I know it's very difficult for a lot of folks with brain injuries to get to the polls, but with the hours they have available, generally across the country, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. It's really important that you reach out to maybe a neighbor or a close relative and say, hey, can you drive me to the polls? Could we go together? Really reach out, and going with people is actually a good way to, socialize and like interact with your neighbors and get to know them a little bit. And it's a good way to exercise your civic duty together.
And I know for me, I could walk to my polling place. It's literally 2 blocks away. So, that could possibly be an option for you as well. So
absolutely.
Regardless, get out and vote. Go get your little sticker.
Right. The sticker is the most important part, right?
Yeah. And the selfie.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, thank you everyone for watching these webinar series. Like I said, have the link in the description if you want to go back and watch any of our previous ones. We have 5 total with this one. Thank you, Zach and Molly, for doing these. This has been really informative and helpful. I've gotten a lot of great feedback that people were very happy we did this. So
all right,
we hope that you got a lot of good info.
That's great. We were really glad to help. And of course, if you have any questions, we'll be watching the comments come in here. If you're watching on the not live stream, drop them there, or all our contact information's at the bottom of that page. If you have questions, even if you're not in Minnesota, reach out. We'd be happy to help. Yeah, right there at the bottom.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Zach. Have a good weekend.
All right,
Have
thanks.
a good weekend, everybody else. Zach, I'll see you Monday for more phone banking.
Excellent. Last night.
All right, everyone. Have a good weekend.
All right, have a good one.